The vast, silent desert stretches out under a dome of endless blue sky. The wind here does not whisper, it howls, carrying grains of sand that have seen empires rise and fall. But long before kings and kingdoms, this emptiness witnessed the footsteps of a man walking a path laid out by God Himself. This is not just a story of a prophet and his son. It is the story of the foundation of faith itself, a test of the heart so profound its echo would shape the destiny of humankind until the end of time. Our story begins with the man at the center of it all, Ibrahim, known as Abraham, the intimate friend of God. He was not born into a vacuum of belief. His world was a crowded temple of stone and wood, a world of idols. His own father, Azar, was a sculptor of these false gods. From his earliest days, Ibrahim's mind questioned. How could a statue he saw being carved with his father's own hands, a statue that could not move, eat, or defend itself, be a deity? He looked beyond the temple roof, to the majesty of a star-filled night. This, he thought, must be my Lord. But the star set. It was not eternal. He turned to the moon, vast and commanding. This surely is my Lord. But the moon, too, dipped below the horizon. Finally, the sun rose in blazing glory. This is the greatest. This must be my Lord. But the sun also said. And in that moment of darkness, a greater light dawned within Ibrahim's soul. He understood. These celestial bodies were creations, subject to a law, following a course. They were signs, not sources. His heart turned, with absolute clarity, to the one who created the heavens and the earth, the one who is eternal, absolute. فَلَمَّا جَنَّ عَلَيْهِ اللَّيْلُ رَأَى كَوْكَبًا قَالَ هَذَا رَبِّي فَلَمَّا أَفَلَ قَالَ لَا أُحِبُّ الْآفِلِينَ فَلَمَّا رَأَى الْقَمَرَ بَازِغًا قَالَ هَذَا رَبِّي فَلَمَّا أَفَلَ قَالَ لَئِن لَّمْ يَهْدِنِي رَبِّي لَأَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الضَّالِّينَ فَلَمَّا رَأَى الشَّمْسَ بَازِغَةً قَالَ هَذَا رَبِّي هَذَا أَكْبَرُ فَلَمَّا أَفَلَتْ قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ إِنِّي بَرِيءٌ مِّمَّا تُشْرِكُونَ إِنِّي وَجَّهْتُ وَجْهِيَ لِلَّذِي فَطَرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ حَنِيفًا وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. This conviction was not a private epiphany. It was a truth that demanded a voice. He began with gentle wisdom, asking his people, "What do you worship?" They spoke proudly of the idols, the traditions of their forefathers. Ibrahim asked, "Do they hear you when you call? Can they benefit you or harm you?" The people could only reply with the echo of their ancestors' footsteps. "We found our fathers worshiping them." But Ibrahim had broken the chain. He saw the dead end of blind tradition. His mission grew bolder. During a festival, when the town was empty, he entered the temple. Before him stood the idols of his people, large and small, adorned with offerings. With an axe in hand, he destroyed all but the largest of them, placing the axe around its neck. When the people returned in panic, they pointed to the largest idol. It must have been him. But Ibrahim, with calm defiance, said, "Why don't you ask him if he can speak?" The crowd fell into a stunned silence. Their logic had been turned against them. They were trapped by the truth of their falsehood. In their rage, there was only one solution: fire. They built a great pyre, the biggest the land had ever seen. They gathered fuel from miles around. They lit it, and the flames roared to the sky, so fierce that birds dared not fly overhead. They bound Ibrahim and placed him in a giant catapult. With a heave, they launched the friend of God into the heart of the inferno. But the command came from the Lord of all creation, the Lord of the fire itself. "O fire, be coolness and safety upon Ibrahim." قُلْنَا يَا نَارُ كُونِي بَرْدًا وَسَلَامًا عَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ. And so it was. The flames lost their burning essence. For Ibrahim, they became a garden of light and comfort. He walked out unscathed, surrounded by the scent of flowers where there should have been ash. His people watched, their hatred now mixed with awe, but their hearts were still sealed. Ibrahim's path in that land was closed. With his wife Sarah and his nephew Lut, he migrated, a stranger in search of a place where he could worship his Lord in peace. He became a nomad of faith, carrying the message of the one God through the lands, his heart heavy with a private longing.
for a righteous heir to carry this light forward. The years passed. Sarah, his beloved wife, remained without child. The promise seemed to fade with the setting of each sun. Then, in the wisdom of God, a new chapter was written. Sarah, in her profound love for Ibrahim and her acceptance of God's decree, presented her Egyptian handmaiden, Hagar, to him. In this union, blessed by God, a child was conceived. The air in their tents changed. The silence was broken by the promise of a newborn's cry. When the boy was born, they named him Ismail. God hears. For indeed, God had heard the secret, tear-stained prayers of his friend Ibrahim. The old man's joy was a palpable force. He had a son, a companion, a legacy. He would teach him about the stars that were not God's, about the fire that could not harm, about the one who commanded it all. But this immense joy was also the prelude to the most searing test. The presence of a child, of a second mother, strained the peace of the household. A deep sadness settled upon Sarah. The promise that she felt was hers alone now seemed shared, and in her pain she could not bear the sight of Hagar and the boy. Ibrahim found himself in an agony of the heart, torn between two loved ones. It was in this crucible of emotion that the command came, not through an angel, not in a thunderous revelation, but placed deep within Ibrahim's soul as a firm, unwavering conviction, a prophetic dream that was in order. He was to take Hagar and their infant son, this very answer to his prayers, and leave them, not in a place of safety, not with kin, but in a distant, uncultivated valley, a place of dry riverbeds and scorching rocks, under a sun that showed no mercy, a place called Bakka, later known as Mecca. The command defied every instinct of a father, of a protector. Yet, the man who had trusted God in the heart of a fire had learned that obedience comes before understanding. With a heavy heart, he prepared for the journey. He did not explain to Hagar the fullness of his command. She trusted him completely. They traveled, a small family, against the enormity of the wilderness, the infant Ishmael nursing at his mother's breast, unaware of the destiny that cradled him. They arrived at the valley. The emptiness was overwhelming. No green, no shade, no murmur of water. The only life was the relentless heat. Ibrahim helped Hagar dismount. He led her to the scant shelter of a thin, thorny tree. He placed beside her a leather water skin, now half empty from the journey, and a small bag of dried dates. Then he turned and began to walk away. Hajar watched, confused. She thought he was inspecting the area, but his steps did not turn back. They carried him further towards the mouth of the valley. A cold dread seized her. "Ibrahim," she called out, her voice cutting the silence. He did not turn. "Where are you going? Are you leaving us in this place where there is no person, no water, nothing?" He kept walking, his shoulders set, his eyes fixed ahead, because to look back would be to crumble. Her voice rose, sharp with fear and abandonment. "Has God commanded you to do this?" At this, Ibrahim stopped. He did not turn his face to her, but his voice, thick with unshed tears, carried back on the dry wind. "Yes." In that one word, the entire universe shifted for Hagar. If this was from God, then everything was different. The fear did not vanish, but it was joined by an iron thread of trust. She said, "Then he will not abandon us." She turned her back to the retreating figure of her husband and gathered her infant son closer. Ibrahim walked on until a ridge hid them from view. There he stopped. He raised his hands to the sky, and the dam within him broke. His prayer was not a lament. It was the planting of a seed in absolute desert, a testament to a trust that saw a future he could not imagine.
ربنا إني أسكنت من ذريتي بواد غير ذي زرع عند بيتك المحرم ربنا ليقيموا الصلاة فاجعل أفئدة من الناس تهوي إليهم وارزقهم من الثمرات لعلهم يشكرون. Our Lord, I have settled some of my descendants in an uncultivated valley near your sacred house, our Lord, that they may establish prayer. So make hearts among the people incline toward them and provide for them from the fruits that they might be grateful. He walked away, leaving behind the two hearts he loved most under the watchful eye of the only one who could sustain them. Now the story becomes Hajar's story. The dates were eaten, the last drop of water from the skin was gone. The infant Ishmael's cries, once strong, grew weak and raspy. His little body was racked with thirst. Hajar could not sit and watch him perish. Faith in its purest form is not passive resignation, it is active striving with interest. She had to move, to search, to exhaust every possibility within her human capacity. She laid the feverish child on the bare earth. She looked north and saw a small hill, Safa. Perhaps from its height she could see a caravan, a glint of water, a sign of life.
She ran, her robes tangled around her legs, her own throat a desert. She climbed Safa, straining her eyes against the glare. Nothing, only the endless, shimmering haze. Despair threatened to swallow her. Then she looked south. Another hill, Marwa. Maybe from there. She ran down Safa, across the rocky, burning valley floor, her breath a ragged sob. She climbed Marwa, scanning the horizon until her eyes burned. Again, nothing. But she could not give up. She had to check on Ismail. She ran back, down Marwa, across the valley, up Safa. She did this 7 times, 7 journeys between hope and despair. On her 7th frantic run, as she reached Marwa, utterly spent, her body broken but her spirit a defiant flame, she heard a sound. Not the wind, a gurgling, a bubbling. She looked toward where she had left her son. There, at his tiny feet where he had kicked the sand in his anguish, water was erupting from the depths of the earth. A spring, clear and gold and life-giving, was flowing.